Hi, I'm Derek Manky, Global Vice President of Threat Intelligence with Fortinet's FortiGuardLIVE, and today I have Douglas Santos, Director of Advanced Threat Intelligence with our labs. How you doing, Doug?
Pretty good, man. How about yourself?
Good. No, you and me have been are very familiar with this, but for our viewers today, we can talk through the second half of 2022 Global Threat Landscape Report. So a lot of data that we have to look at. 6 months of data across the entire attack surface, end to end. We're looking at everything from endpoint data to sandbox to really the whole kill chain and stuff, right, Doug?
Yeah.
Some cool new views that are included in the report, so we can talk through that. But let's start sort of at the beginning, as it were, with the tactics, techniques, procedures. We're looking at TTPs much more now. And one thing in the report we highlight is, and this actually backs up a lot of the advanced persistent cybercrime and targeted attacks that we're seeing.
Yeah.
More focus for cyber criminals, but just overall on reconnaissance, aren't we?
Yeah. So what we're seeing is that increasingly, since we understand, so cyber criminals are always trying to understand what we're doing as well, right? And they have access to, VirusTotal. On VirusTotal, they have different agents, and they understand that they need to be more creative than the guys who are trying to defend the networks they are trying to beat in order to gain access. So what we're seeing is that they're doing a lot of more reconnaissance and weaponization phase. And we've seen this with Log4j and Proxy Shell, where zero-day vulnerabilities were very quickly developed and weaponized against mass campaigns, right? So what we are featuring in this report right now is we're trying to move a little before the initial access tactic. We're trying to give our customers, partners, and the threat intelligence community information on the reconnaissance and weaponization phase. And that comes from our FortiRecon product. So you're going to be able to get reports on specific liquid credentials, things like if there was found like credit cards, specific information about vulnerability shatter, and also you're going to be able to understand your external exposure, so system services assets that are exposed. And we're constantly talking about ways to break the attack kill chain by giving our outbreak alerts with specific information on threat hunting, and by doing the specific thing on the recon and weaponization phase, you're breaking the kill chain earlier, right? So you have more time, more ability to stop the attack before it does any damage at all.
So you're breaking it before it's formed, essentially.
Yeah. So that's
it's a very good point and important fact. And I'm now saying that every organization should be under the assumption every day that they are going to be a target. Keyword is target, right? Before it was, just cyber hygiene we talked about and safety practices, but the reality is now we're seeing just more investment on targeted attacks. And like you said, that means focus on reconnaissance and the weaponization of information, essentially, right? Being able to use that. It's interesting, if you look at our coverage in the report on the TTPs, for initial access, we talk about drive-by compromised malware, so malicious JavaScript, stuff like that, that's being planted, but also not a surprise, but a heavy use of phishing and spear phishing as well too, right?
Yeah, we've seen a lot of drive-by compromise, and that can be specifically linked to the abuse of malicious ads. So who remember the cracked versions of software that people used to download from torrent downloaders? No, now they're back, but they're back with a twist, right? You're not actually downloading them via BitTorrent. They are being advertised on Google Ads, and then people say, "Oh, it's a free version of a tool that I want, with a domain lookalike." And they, by unaware users, will download the cracked version which has a malicious payload, and that's how they're getting in, right? They're convincing people that it is a free version with Google Ads, because when you're searching for a specific tool that you want to, let's say an Adobe or any graphical editor, and you see the top result for your query on Google. And that's an ad. It's like, oh, okay. People don't even think, they're going after the psychology of the thing.
Yeah. Yeah. The resurfacing of SEO techniques, right?
Yes, exactly.
Malicious SEO, definitely. That's been something long played, but refactored. And I want to talk about that, actually, the refactoring part in a second. First, so let's talk about the other. To me, this is one of the most concerning things. You've heard me talk about this a lot, but the data in the report really shows this now, is the acceleration of wipers, right?
Yeah.
We've seen 16 families last year in 2022. And, telemetry statistic wise, it was 16% from the first half to second half, and then 53% from Q3 to Q4. And it's not just data wipers. We have disk wipers. We even saw more wiper. And what's, I think, even more troubling is that in the second half, the wipers are now sort of commercialized, right? Like there's even open source ones that are being put up on GitHub too.
Yeah, with that, that's a trend we've seen with ransomware and botnets, right? Like Mirai has, it's open source, and it only means one thing: we're gonna see more and more of this, because more threat actors will start to capitalize and even offer this on the dark web. Initially, it's being used and abused for cyber warfare that tails the physical cyber war. But if you want to take your competition out of business, you can just deploy a wiper, and if they don't have like backups or sound security posture, they will get hit, and maybe they will get out of business. So this is something that not only governments and large institutions need to pay attention to, but any size of corporation should be aware that this might be targeted against them.
Yeah. Yeah, going back to that target word, it's because a combination effect too, right? When you have wipers and the reconnaissance focus we were just talking about, and the service, the services, that was something in our prediction piece. We're expecting to see more reconnaissance as a service even possibly come out in the future too. So another really interesting piece, and this is a new data set that we had in the report, was looking, again, we talk about our high resolution threat intelligence at FortiGuard Labs, and we continue to build on that. First was the TTP heat maps, which still is in the report, showing, again, a heat map spread of all those, techniques through the tactics. We just talked about that with reconnaissance and initial access and that. But a new piece now is looking at the code at, putting a microscope onto the code itself, right? And looking at a big problem that we're seeing out there of code reuse, right? It's showing that families like a Moted now that are being actually retrofitted, essentially, right? Recompiled new variants, not polymorphic variants, right? Like, or quote unquote, not smart code. Like, it's actually smart, right? Because they're retrofitting it, but using old code too.
Yeah. They are, we analyzed, I think it was, in January it was 6 clusters, but 90 something variants. And we tried to understand what was the percentage of shared code that they used. And there's a very cool graph that shows the connections. But one thing that caught attention is they do have shared code reuse, but they develop new code as well. So there's one variant that doesn't share code with any other one. So that alludes to the active development of the specific threat, right? So we're seeing that specific piece of cluster variant will soon start sharing code with others, right? So you can clearly see at which pace the malware authors are developing, adding new features, and correlating the use of this code throughout the different variants. And if you're trying to do good detection like Chiara signatures, and you got to pay attention to this, right? You got to be able to quickly identify and separate what's new from what's old. And that's done with machine learning and automation, so you can quickly analyze a bunch of malicious samples and understand, this code is new, but it's still Moted. Yeah, we'll try to understand how this shift is. It's an ongoing game.
And I think what's important to note here is that it really gives them, when I say them, the malicious code developers a head start, right? Because they don't have to develop this from scratch. That's really what they're using this for, a springboard, right? A platform that they could customize much more easily and quicker too.
Yeah. We're seeing this all over the board, right? Which was weird at first because some very old code is showing up, but then you start to correlating with other stuff like BT data and other partners. You'll see, look, actually, we can't say that there's a specific family that's back, but its code is flying, and we're seeing it on hashes when we dissect them and put them on the microscopes. And oh, yep, that's the code. Yeah, but it doesn't mean that the old gang is back.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's
it was even some of the malicious code that we're seeing on these samples. We know that the responsibles for the initial development of that code have been arrested. So it's not possibly them, but code never dies, right?
Yeah, exactly. No, it's a great point. And what's old is new, as we say, right?
And I was just thinking about this because even when you're talking about machine learning solutions and also legacy antivirus, there's a thing called feature engineering, and you have to work with a specific bag of features. And once that specific feature is not found on samples anymore, it gets discarded, right? So adversaries can pick up on that as well. So, that specific machine learning model is not picking up on like 10 years old code. So let's reintroduce that, So
yeah,
it's something interesting because it's evolving, right? And you have to keep the feature space manageable, right? To represent what's going on the threat landscape at that very moment. It doesn't mean that it cannot adapt. It can, but if it's just a small percentage of samples, it's gonna get difficult to really understand it, incorporate. It's a huge amount of new code that's being seen on a lot of samples. Then machine learning can obviously quickly pick up. But if it's very slim, it's definitely gonna get more difficult for the machine learning implementation to actually identify and incorporate that.
Yeah, great point, Doug. And so another switching gear is another data set that we've refined from the last report is what we're now calling the red zone. So let's talk about that. I think this is really interesting because it's essentially a funnel, right? Like we've defined 3 categories: total attack surface, which is everything that applies everywhere, right? I mean, that's very big. It's almost 200,000 CVEs, right, that are mapped on that. Growing amount of applications, all of that. But what matters more is the open attack surface per organization. It's different. Every organization has different applications, different stack, right? And so different holes that apply to that, the gaps. And then the active attack surface, which is actually, we're looking at those per organization, what holes are open and what are attackers actually investing their time into? What are they actually attacking and going after? And that's what I call the red zone, right? And it was small, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's just a tiny little bit of the overall picture because there's not exploits for every vulnerability out there. Some of them never get an exploit, like a cyber weapon, to explore that. And I think that's so valuable because one of the things that CISOs everywhere struggle with, okay, I have 10,000 systems. Of those, 100 of them are critical. On this critical systems, I have critical, medium, and low vulnerabilities. But which one should I patch first? One will think that you should be patching the critical ones first. But if there's not an exploit and it's not being actively exploited, and you have a medium that's highly exploited and it's gonna get you access to the system, that's which one you should patch first. So it's a powerful new insight that we're giving CISOs that will help them actually prioritize with what we're seeing on the field. So it's very how can I say, it's powerful for them.
Yeah. What I love about this is it's not it is practical, and it's not boiling the ocean approach, right? Because now it's the data point we had in the report is it's 1% of that attack surface. Yeah, now that's a different conversation, right?
Yeah,
much more.
Yeah. Same thing with the. It's a completely different thing. I'm sorry, but But the sightings report from MITRE, right? You have like 500 techniques and different ways to implement those techniques. Which one you should focus, right? So that's where we're heading to, making sure that our customers and our partners, and sometimes even the general intelligence community, has that insight into what really matters, right? Because it's such a huge amount of information, and it's impossible to keep track of everything. So we're trying to boil down to what we're actually seeing on the threat landscape, and making sure that it's communicated properly and everyone has the tools to understand and use that information.
Yeah, no, great point on MITRE. It's this exact same idea with the heat maps we're doing as well.
Yeah,
trying to break it down, and it's a correlated data set from our FortiGuardLIVE's threat intelligence, which is a great practical way to approach it for sure. And it is a great tool not only for CISOs, but I think for we've been talking more lately about board level investment into cybersecurity, right? Because they speak dashboards, and the red zone is a perfect example of that, right? That way, per the organization, here are the critical ones that are under attack. Right? Here's what we're up against. We need to invest into securing this, right?
Yeah,
that's a powerful message too.
Yeah, I think we just gave back the CISOs like 1 hour of sleep per night.
Only one? Yeah. But yeah, anyway, it's I agree, and it's a great tool, and these are the things we need to do, quite frankly, to be more resilient and effective against the attacks. In the report, every section we've actually broken down advice for mitigation and strategy against these, because each element is part of that kill chain, right? Even down to the incident response piece, post attack, and all attack on the reconnaissance that we're talking about, education still.
Yeah,
we have a pledge to train a million more people with their NSE program, right? That all applies to this. So, all right, Doug, I'm sure we'll dive into this deeper, and I know we're looking at this every day. I want to thank you for your time. For the viewers, you can follow our latest research, including summaries from the blog at blog.fortinet.com, and pick up the latest copy of the report from Fortinet.com. Thanks, Doug.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, good to talk to you. This is Derek Manky signing off with FortiGuard Live.